I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who checks her husband's pockets. But there I was, at 63 years old, standing in our laundry room with my hands trembling as I pulled out receipt after receipt from Michael's jacket. 14 hotel receipts, $4,500. And suddenly, that expensive perfume I'd smelled on him last Tuesday, the one he'd laughed off as coming from a coworker's hug at the office party, made perfect, devastating sense. Before I tell you what I uncovered, please tap like. It helps me stay steady. If you've ever felt a lie unravel in front of you, please subscribe. Your support feels like the only honesty left. And comment your name and where you're watching from. I want to remember those who stand with me. My name is Eleanor, and for 38 years, I believed I had the marriage everyone envied. Michael and I met when I was 25, fresh out of nursing school, and he was a young architect with big dreams and an even bigger smile. He used to sketch buildings on napkins during our coffee dates, telling me about the home he'd designed for us someday. And he did. Our house on Maple Street, with its wide front porch and garden that I'd tended for decades, was his first major project. Every corner of it held our memories. The kitchen where we'd cooked countless Sunday dinners, the living room where we'd raised our 2 children, the bedroom where we'd held each other through good times and bad. Or so I thought. I'd spent my entire adult life being Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, devoted wife, loving mother, dedicated nurse. I worked night shifts at St. Mary's Hospital for 20 years so I could be home during the day when our kids were young. I planned every birthday party, every holiday gathering, every family vacation. I managed our household budget down to the last penny, making sure we could afford Michael's golf club membership and his expensive taste in scotch. Oh, I even gave up my dream of becoming a nurse practitioner because Michael said we needed to focus on one career at a time, and his architecture firm was just taking off. "We're a team, Ellie," he used to say, kissing my forehead. "Your support means everything to me." And I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. Michael was charming. Everyone said so. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Our friends called us couple goals. Our daughter Sarah and son James grew up watching what they thought was a perfect marriage. When Sarah got engaged last year, she told me, "I hope David and I can have what you and Dad have." The guilt I feel now, knowing that what we had was a lie, it eats at me every single day. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning of the end, to 6 months ago, when the first crack appeared in my carefully constructed reality. It started with small things. Michael began working late more often. "Big project downtown," he'd say, barely looking up at his phone at dinner. "The client is demanding, but the commission is worth it." He started going to the gym at odd hours, 5 in the morning, 9 at night. His phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter while he showered, suddenly became an extension of his hand. He changed the password. When I asked about it casually, he laughed. "Office security policy. They made everyone update their codes. You know how it is with these corporate cybersecurity things." I didn't know, actually, but I nodded and smiled, because that's what I'd done for 38 years. Trusted him completely. The perfume incident happened on a Tuesday evening in March. Michael came home around 8, later than usual, and when he kissed my cheek, I smelled it. Not my perfume. I wore the same light floral scent I'd worn since our wedding. This was different, heavy, expensive. The kind of perfume that costs more than my entire makeup collection. "You smell different," I said, pulling back slightly. He laughed, that easy, confident laugh that had always made me feel safe. "Oh, that?" Chuckle. Linda from accounting was celebrating her promotion. She hugged everyone goodbye at the office party. Must have been her perfume. You know how strong some women wear it. There was an office party tonight? I asked. You didn't mention it this morning. Didn't I? He was already walking toward the stairs, loosening his tie. I'm beat, Ellie. Going to take a shower. And just like that, the conversation was over. He disappeared upstairs and I stood in the kitchen telling myself I was being paranoid. Women of my age, we worry about these things, don't we? We see our bodies aging, our hair graying, and we wonder if we're still enough, if we ever were enough. I pushed the thought away and went back to cleaning up the dinner dishes. His plate still full on the table because he'd eaten something at the party. The next few months brought more changes. Michael bought new clothes, fitted shirts and colors he'd never worn before, expensive cologne, even new underwear. Just updating the wardrobe, he said when I commented. Can't meet clients looking like someone's grandpa. He started going on more business trips. Chicago for 4 days, Boston for 3, Atlanta for a long weekend. Each time, he'd kiss me goodbye at the door with that same familiar smile, tell me he'd miss me, and promise to bring back something nice.
He never did. Our intimate life, which had always been good, comfortable, familiar, began to fade. Tired from work, he'd say, turning over in bed. This project is killing me. Weeks turned into months. I told myself it was normal for couples our age. We'd been together for nearly 4 decades. Marriage evolved. Passion became companionship. That's what all the magazines said anyway. But deep down, in that place I was too afraid to examine too closely, I knew. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to face it. Sarah noticed before I consciously admitted anything was off. She came over for lunch one Saturday in July, her baby bump just starting to show, our first grandchild due in December. We were sitting in the garden, and she was telling me about her nursery plans when she suddenly stopped mid-sentence. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "You seem distant lately." "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired. The hospital has been short-staffed." "Is Dad okay?" she pressed. "He barely said 2 words at Sunday dinner last week, and he left early." "He's stressed about work," I said automatically. The same excuse I've been telling myself. "You know how he gets when he's on a big project." Sarah studied me for a long moment, and I could see the concern in her eyes. My eyes, the same hazel green color. "If something's wrong—" "Nothing's wrong," I interrupted. Perhaps too quickly. "I promise." "Now, tell me more about the nursery. Have you decided on a color scheme?" I steered the conversation back to safe territory, but I could feel Sarah's worried gaze on me throughout lunch. My daughter knew me too well. She'd inherited my intuition, my ability to sense when something was off, but I wasn't ready to voice my fears, not even to her, because saying them out loud would make them real, and I wasn't strong enough for that. Not yet. The night I found the receipts was a Thursday in late September. Michael had left for another business trip to Philadelphia, or so he'd said. "Just 2 nights," he told me that morning, kissing my forehead in that absent way he developed. "I'll be back Saturday morning." I'd watched him drive away, his overnight bag in the back seat, and felt that now familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. I'd planned to do his laundry from the previous week. That was our routine. He'd leave his worn clothes in the hamper, I'd wash them while he was gone, and everything would be fresh when he returned. It was such a small domestic thing, but it was part of how I showed love, how I'd shown love for 38 years. I was sorting through his clothes when I felt something crinkle in the pocket of his gray sport coat. Not unusual. Michael often forgot to empty his pockets. Usually it was business cards, gum wrappers, parking receipts. But this time, when I pulled out the first receipt, my blood ran cold. The Riverside Hotel, room 412. One night, $287? My hand started shaking as I dug deeper into the pocket. Another receipt. The Grand Plaza Hotel, room 618. 2 nights, $654. I tore through his other jackets hanging in the closet, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. The Marina Bay Inn, the Lexington Suites, the Westwood Hotel. 14 receipts in total, dating back 5 months. $4,500 spent on hotel rooms. Hotels here in our city, not in the distant cities he claimed to be visiting for work. I sank onto our bedroom floor, receipts scattered around me like evidence at a crime scene. This couldn't be happening. Not to us. Not after everything we'd built together. Not after 38 years of marriage, 2 children, a grandchild on the way. Not after all the sacrifices I'd made, all the dreams I'd deferred, all the nights I'd worked so he could build his career. But it was happening. The perfume, the late nights, the new clothes, the distant behavior, the phone calls he'd taken his car, the way he'd stopped really looking at me months ago. It was all so painfully obvious now. I don't know how long I sat there on that floor. Long enough for the afternoon sun to shift across the room, casting long shadows on the walls. Long enough for my tears to dry on my cheeks, leaving them stiff and salty. Long enough for something inside me to shift, from shock to something harder, colder. I gathered the receipts with steady hands and took them downstairs. I made copies of every single one on our home printer, then photographed them with my phone. I put the originals in an envelope and locked them in our small safe, the one Michael thought I didn't know the combination to, but I had watched him open it enough times over the years. Then I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't drink and waited. Michael came home Saturday morning exactly when he'd said he would, rolling his small suitcase behind him, smiling like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just spent 2 nights God knows where, doing God knows what, with God knows who. "Hey, babe," he called out, heading toward the kitchen. "I'm starving. Did you make your famous pancakes?"
"We need to talk," I said quietly. Something in my tone must have alerted him because his smile faltered. "What's wrong?" I slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." He frowned, setting down his suitcase. "Ellie, what's this about? I just got home." "Open it." His hands shook slightly as he pulled out the receipts. I watched his face drain of color, watched him shuffle through them one by one, watched the exact moment he realized he'd been caught. And in that moment, I waited for him to deny it, to explain it away with some reasonable story, to prove that my worst fears were unfounded. Instead, he sighed and set the receipts down on the table. Just sighed. Like I'd caught him eating cookies before dinner instead of destroying our marriage. "How long?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "How long have you been having an affair?" "Ellie, it's not—" He ran his hand through his hair, that gesture I'd once found endearing. "It's complicated. How long, Michael?" He flinched. I never raised my voice. In 38 years, I'd maybe shouted at him 3 times. 8 months, he finally said. "Her name is Vanessa. She's a client." 8 months. 8 months he'd been living a double life. 8 months of lies and hotel rooms and pretending everything was fine. 8 months while I'd been worrying I wasn't pretty enough anymore, wasn't interesting enough, wasn't enough, period. "I want you to leave," I heard myself say. "Ellie, let's talk about this. Get out." The words came from somewhere deep inside me, somewhere I didn't know existed. Pack a bag and get out of my house. Your house? He stood up, and I saw a flash of anger cross his face. This is our house. I designed it. My career paid for it. And my nursing salary covered the mortgage for the first 10 years while you were building that career. My inheritance from my parents went into the down payment. My unpaid labor raising our children and managing this household for 40 years made it possible for you to work those long hours. So yes, Michael, my house. I watched him realize that the quiet, supportive wife he'd taken for granted for 38 years was done being quiet, done being supportive. He left 20 minutes later with a hastily packed suitcase, muttering about needing time to think, about how we'd talk when I was caller, about how I was overreacting. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it, my whole body trembling. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my sister, Margaret. "He's been cheating," I said as soon as she answered, "for 8 months, with a client named Vanessa." The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds before Margaret exploded. "That son of a Eleanor, I'm coming over right now. Don't move, don't do anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Margaret arrived in 15, letting herself in with her spare key. She found me still at the kitchen table, staring at those receipts. She didn't say anything at first, just wrapped her arms around me and held me while I finally, truly broke down. All the tears I'd held back, all the pain I'd swallowed, all the denial I'd maintained came pouring out in great, gasping sobs. "I gave him everything," I cried into her shoulder. "Everything, Margaret. My youth, my career ambitions, my dreams. I made his comfort my priority for 38 years. And for what? For hotel receipts and lies?" "I know, honey," she whispered, stroking my hair. "I know." When I finally cried myself out, Margaret made us both strong tea and sat across from me with that fierce look she got when someone hurt someone she loved. My older sister by 3 years, Margaret had been the bold one growing up while I was the peacemaker. She'd been divorced twice and always said she wished I had a little more of her "don't take crap from anyone" attitude. Looks like I was about to develop it. "Okay," she said, pulling out her phone. "First things first, you need a lawyer. I know someone, Linda Chen. She's the best divorce attorney in the state, and she doesn't mess around." "Divorce?" I repeated, the word foreign on my tongue. "Margaret, maybe we should try counseling first." "Ellie, stop. He had an 8-month affair, 8 months of looking you in the eye every single day and lying. That's not a mistake. That's not a moment of weakness. That's a choice he made repeatedly, over and over for almost a year." She reached across the table and gripped my hand. "You deserve better than this. You've always deserved better than this." Deep down, I knew she was right, but acknowledging it meant accepting that my marriage, my entire adult identity as Michael's wife, was over. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. "Let me think about it," I said finally. Margaret's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Fine, but I'm staying here tonight. And you're keeping those receipts somewhere safe. And tomorrow, we're changing the locks." "Margaret? What? You want to leave the door open so he can waltz back in whenever he feels like it? No, this is your house, and you control who enters it, starting now."
I wanted to argue, to say she was being dramatic, to insist that Michael would never try to just move back in without permission. But then I remembered his words earlier. This is our house. The possessiveness in his tone, the entitlement. Like my feelings about what he'd done didn't matter as much as his rights to the property. "Okay," I whispered. "We'll change the locks tomorrow." Margaret stayed true to her word. She slept in the guest room that night, and the next morning she had a locksmith at the house by 8 a.m. While the locks were being changed, my phone rang. Michael. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the accept button. Margaret snatched the phone from my hand and answered it herself. "Hi, Michael." "Yes, this is Margaret." "No, Eleanor can't come to the phone right now."
Well, that's too bad. Maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 8 months cheating on her. I don't care what you need from the house. You can arrange a time with Eleanor when she's ready to talk to you, and someone will be present when you come by. What? No, your key won't work anymore. We changed the locks. Have a nice day. She hung up and handed me back my phone. There, boundaries established. I should have felt empowered. Instead, I felt sick. This was really happening. My marriage was really over, and I had no idea who I was without it. The next few days passed in a blur. Sarah called, having heard from her father that I'd thrown him out over a misunderstanding. I told her the truth, all of it. The perfume, the receipts, the 8-month affair. Telling my daughter that her father had cheated on me was one of the hardest conversations of my life. I heard her break down on the other end of the line, her anger at her father mixing with her shock and disappointment. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over?" "No, sweetheart," I said, wiping my own tears. "You're 7 months pregnant. You don't need this stress. Margaret is here with me. I'm okay." I wasn't okay, but what else was I supposed to say? James called the next day, his voice tight with fury. "Dad said you two are having some problems, but he didn't mention that the problem was him sleeping with someone else for 8 months. Mom, what do you need? Do you need money for a lawyer? Should I come home?" My son, calling from Seattle where he worked as a software engineer. My protective, wonderful son. "I don't need money," I told him, "and you don't need to come home. I just need you to not judge me if this gets messy." "Judge you?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mom, you could burn his car and I wouldn't judge you. He's the one who broke our family." After I hung up with James, I sat in the quiet house and let that truth sink in. Michael broke our family, not me. For the first time in days, I felt something other than pain and shock. I felt angry. Margaret found me like that an hour later, sitting in Michael's study, looking at the photos on his desk. Our wedding photo, me in my simple white dress, him in his father's suit, both of us so young and hopeful. Photos of Sarah and James at various ages. A photo of all 4 of us from last Christmas, everyone smiling at the camera like we were the perfect, happy family. All lies. Or not lies exactly, but incomplete truths. We'd been happy once. I was sure of it. But somewhere along the way, Michael had stopped choosing us, stopped choosing me. "I called Linda Chen," Margaret said from the doorway. "She can see you tomorrow at 10. I looked up at my sister, this fierce woman who refused to let anyone push her around. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I've been Mrs. Michael Thompson for 38 years. I don't know how to be just Eleanor anymore." Margaret came into the room and sat beside me. "Then it's time to figure it out. And I'll tell you what, Eleanor is going to be a hell of a lot stronger than Mrs. Michael Thompson ever was." I met with Linda Chen that morning. She was in her 50s, sharply dressed, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that immediately put me at ease. I showed her the receipts, told her the whole story, and watched her take meticulous notes. "Okay, Eleonora," she said when I finished. "First, I want you to know that you have a very strong case. These receipts are clear evidence of adultery, which in our state matters for divorce proceedings. Second, I need you to gather all financial documents, bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, retirement funds, property deeds, everything. Can you do that?" I nodded. Michael had always handled our finance. "Okay. Given the length of your marriage and the income disparity, you'll likely be entitled to spousal support in addition to an equitable division of assets. This house, whose name is on the deed?" "Both of ours." "And you said your inheritance helped with the down payment. Do you have documentation of that?" "Yes, it's in our safe." "Perfect. Get that for me." Linda leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Eleanor, I have to ask, what do you want from this divorce?
What does justice look like to you? I thought about it. What did I want? I wanted the last 38 years back. I wanted the life I thought I had. I wanted to unknow what I now knew. But since I couldn't have any of that, I want security, I said finally. I want to know that I won't lose everything I've worked for because he decided our marriage wasn't enough for him anymore, and I want him to understand that actions have consequences. I want him to face what he's done. Linda smiled. Then let's make that happen. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered documents, bank statements going back years, credit card bills, tax returns, property documents, investment portfolios. And as I went through everything, I started to see patterns I'd never noticed before. Cash withdrawals Michael couldn't account for. Credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to on nights he'd claimed to be working late. A second credit card I didn't know existed with charges dating back over a year. He hadn't just been having an affair for 8 months. He'd been planning it, facilitating it, lying about it for much longer. The affair with Vanessa might have started 8 months ago, but the deception had started long before that. I showed everything to Linda. She organized it into a case file that made Michael's betrayal undeniable and documented. "This is very good work, Eleanor," she said. "When we file, he's not going to have a leg to stand on." "When do we file?" I asked. "Are you ready?" Was I ready? Ready to officially end my marriage? Ready to blow up the life I'd known? "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." We filed for divorce on October 15th. The papers were served to Michael at his office 3 days later. According to Linda, he'd been shocked, angry, and had immediately called his own lawyer. Good. Let him feel a fraction of the shock I'd felt finding those receipts. He called me that night, and for the first time since I'd kicked him out, I answered. "Ellie, what the hell?" His voice was tight with anger. "You filed for divorce without even talking to me about it? What was there to talk about, Michael? You had an 8-month affair. You lied to me every day. You spent our money on hotel rooms to sleep with another woman. What exactly did you think was going to happen? I thought we'd go to counseling. I thought we'd work through this. 38 years of marriage is worth fighting for, isn't it?" A month ago, those words might have swayed me. The pleading tone, the invocation of our long history together, the promise that we could fix it. But I'd had weeks to think, weeks to process, weeks to realize that this wasn't about one mistake. It was about a pattern of choices that showed me exactly how little he valued our marriage, how little he valued me. You should have thought about that before you started sleeping with Vanessa. Sign the papers, Michael. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder than... He laughed, but it was an ugly sound. "You're taking me for everything I'm worth? You want the house, spousal support, half my business, half of everything we built together," I interrupted, "which is what I'm legally entitled to. And frankly, Michael, after sacrificing my career, my dreams, and my youth to support you, I think I've earned it." "Oh, here we go. The smarter speech. You sacrificed so much for me. You gave up everything. Have you ever considered that maybe I didn't ask you to do any of that? That maybe you made yourself small and blamed me for it?" His words hit like a physical blow. Is that how he saw it? That I made myself small? That my sacrifices, working night shifts so I could raise our children, deferring my own career advancement, managing our household so he could focus on his business, were my fault, not choices I'd made for our family? Wow. I breathe. 38 years. And this is who you really are? Ellie, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. Firmly. You meant every word. And you know what? Thank you. Because now I don't feel guilty about what I'm asking for in this divorce. Sign the papers, Michael. You have 30 days to respond. I hung up before he could say anything else. Then I sat on my kitchen floor and cried. Not for the marriage I'd lost, but for the years I had wasted on a man who saw my love as weakness and my sacrifices as self-inflicted wounds. Margaret found me there an hour later. She didn't ask questions, just sat beside me and held my hand until the tears stopped. And when they finally did, I felt something shift inside me, something hard and determined, something that said, enough.
Michael contested the divorce. Of course he did. His lawyer argued that 8 months wasn't enough to constitute cruel and inhuman treatment, that the hotel receipts didn't prove anything, that I was being vindictive. Linda tore his arguments apart with documentation. The receipts, the secret credit card, the cash withdrawals, testimony from Sarah and James about their father's changed behavior and admission of the affair. Meanwhile, Michael tried a different approach with our friends. He'd told them his side of the story, that we'd been growing apart for years, that I'd become cold and distant, that he'd made a mistake, but I was being unreasonable about it. Some of our friends believed him. Couples we'd known for decades started awkwardly avoiding me at the grocery store or making excuses when I called. It hurt. I won't lie. It hurt terribly to watch some people I'd considered close friends choose him over me. Or worse, decide they didn't want to choose at all and fade away from both of us. But others surprised me. Karen and Tom, who lived 3 houses down, showed up at my door with a casserole and a bottle of wine and told me they'd known Michael was trouble from day one. Lydia from my book club organized a girls' night that was transparently an intervention to make sure I was okay, but I appreciated it anyway. And Sarah. My daughter became my fiercest defender. 8 months pregnant and furious with her father, she called him and told him that he wanted to meet his grandchild. He needed to stop spreading lies about me and accept responsibility for destroying his marriage. I tried to discourage her from getting in the middle, but she was having none of it. He doesn't get to paint you as the villain when he's the one who cheated, she said, her hand on her swollen belly. I'm not asking you to forgive him, and I'm sure as hell not asking you to take him back. But he needs to face what he's done with some grace and dignity, and right now, he's failing at both. Hearing my daughter defend me with such ferocity made me cry, but good tears this time. Proud tears. She learned to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard, even when it meant confronting someone she loved. I'd taught her that, even if I'd forgotten how to do it for myself. Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it with Margaret, Sarah, James, and a few close friends. Michael spent it alone, or maybe with Vanessa. I didn't ask and didn't care. For the first time in 38 years, I didn't cook a turkey for Michael's family. I didn't set the table with the good china. I didn't orchestrate the perfect Norman Rockwell holiday. You know what? It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. To Eleanor, Margaret said, raising her wine glass. To her next chapter. To Mom, Sarah and James echoed. The strongest woman we know. I'd cried at that, of course, but they were right. I was getting stronger. Every day, every small act of independence, every decision I made on my own, they were all building something new in me. Something I'd lost somewhere along the way of being Michael's wife. The divorce proceedings dragged on through December. Michael kept trying to reduce the spousal support, claiming his business was worth less than it actually was. Linda hired a forensic accountant who proved otherwise. He fought me on the house, even though I'd proven my inheritance paid the down payment and my salary covered half the mortgage for years. Linda presented evidence of my contributions and financial investment. He tried to argue I should get less because I had my own career and income. Linda pointed out the massive income disparity and how my career had been limited by my responsibilities to our family. Every tactic he tried, Linda countered. And slowly, I watched Michael realize that I wasn't going to back down, that the quiet, accommodating wife he'd taken for granted was gone. But Michael
wasn't done. In mid-December, he tried one more manipulation. He showed up at the house, my house with its new locks, late one evening. I saw him on the doorbell camera that Margaret had insisted I install. He looked tired, older than his 65 years, and he was holding something. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "What do you want, Michael?" He held up a wrapped gift. "It's almost Christmas. I bought this for you months ago, before everything. I thought you should have it." I stared at the box, wrapped in silver paper with a red bow. 3 months ago, I would have been touched. I would have taken it as a sign that he still cared, that maybe we could work things out. But now, I knew better. "How long have you been seeing Vanessa?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "I told you. 8 months. The truth, Michael. For once in your life, tell me the truth." His jaw worked for a moment. "Then 14 months. 14 months. Over a year. He'd been with her when we celebrated our 37th anniversary, when James visited for his birthday, when Sarah announced her pregnancy, when I'd planned that surprise party for Michael's 65th birthday, inviting all his friends and colleagues, spending weeks getting every detail perfect. He'd been cheating on me through all of it.
"Keep your gift," I said, my voice steady despite the tears on my cheeks. "I don't want anything from you except the divorce settlement Linda outlined. Sign the papers, Michael. It's over." "Ellie, please." He tried to step forward, but I moved to close the door. "It's Eleanor. Only people who respect me get to call me Ellie. And you lost that privilege when you spent 14 months lying to my face." I started to close the door, then paused. "Oh, and Michael, that perfume I smelled on you in March, the one you said was from Linda in accounting, there is no Linda in accounting at your firm. I called and asked. So that was just one more lie in a very, very long list." I shut the door in his face and locked it. Then I collapsed against it, my whole body shaking. But this time I wasn't crying from sadness or betrayal. I was crying from the sheer relief of finally standing up for myself. Margaret appeared from the living room, where she'd been ready to call the police if needed. "Are you okay?" 14 months, I told her. He's been with her for 14 months. My sister's face hardened. "That son of a—" She caught herself, took a breath. "Okay, we're calling Linda first thing tomorrow. This changes things. He lied under oath about the timeline." And it did change things. When Linda brought the new information to the judge overseeing our case, along with proof that Michael had committed perjury about the affair's duration, the judge was not pleased. Michael's lawyer scrambled to justify it, claiming Michael had been confused about dates. But the damage was done. The judge made it clear that Michael's credibility was in question, which affected every other claim he'd made about finances, property, and his version of our marriage's breakdown. On January 9th, 2 days after what would have been our 39th anniversary, Michael's lawyer called Linda to discuss a settlement. Michael was ready to agree to terms. He'd sign over the house to me fully, agree to the spousal support amount Linda had proposed, and split our other assets 50-50. In exchange, he wanted a quick, uncontested divorce so he could move on with his life. Move on with his life. As if I'd the one who'd holding him back. As if he hadn't been the one who destroyed everything. But I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of lawyers, tired of reliving the betrayal over and over in legal documents and court filings. I wanted it done. I wanted to close this chapter and start the next one. So I told Linda to accept the settlement. We finalized everything by the end of January. On February 3rd, I stood in a courtroom and listened to a judge declare that my 38-year marriage was officially over.
Michael was on the other side of the room next to his lawyer, not looking at me. I kept my spine straight, my head high. I'd cried enough tears over this man. He wasn't getting any more. When it was over, Linda shook my hand. "You did it, Eleanor. The house is yours. You'll receive spousal support for 15 years or until you remarry. You got everything we asked for." "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. Linda had fought for me when I was too emotionally devastated to fight for myself. She'd been exactly what I needed, a fierce advocate who saw my worth even when I'd forgotten it. I walked out of that courtroom a divorced woman, legally, financially independent, free from a marriage that had become a prison of lies and betrayal, and absolutely terrified of what came next. The first few weeks after the divorce were strange. The house felt enormous and empty, even though I'd been living alone for months. I kept setting 2 places at the table before remembering. I kept making too much coffee in the morning. I kept reaching for my phone to tell Michael something before stopping myself. 38 years of habits are hard to break, even when you desperately wanted them broken. But slowly—
"Yes, she is," I agreed. Then I handed Lily to Sarah and stood up. "I'm going to get some coffee. Give you time with your granddaughter." I walked past him without another word, my head high, my shoulders back. In the hospital cafeteria, I bought a cup of coffee I didn't really want and sat by the window, watching the winter sun break through the clouds. Margaret found me there 20 minutes later. "You okay?" she asked, sitting down across from me. "Yeah," I said, and I was surprised to realize it was true. I really am. For the first time in months, I feel okay. "That's because you're free," Margaret said. "Free from the lies, free from the anxiety of wondering what he was hiding, free from making yourself small to make him comfortable. You're just Eleanor now, and Eleanor is pretty damn amazing." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. "When did you get so wise?" "2 divorces, remember? I learned the hard way." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But you're going to be okay, Elle. Better than okay. You're going to be great." And she was right. Over the next few months, I built a new life. I took on extra shifts at the hospital and used the money to take a long weekend trip to San Francisco with Margaret, something I'd always wanted to do but never had because Michael hated long flights. I joined a yoga class and met a wonderful group of women who invited me to their monthly potlucks. I started volunteering at the library on my days off, reading to children and organizing book drives. I filled my life with things that made me happy, things I'd put aside for decades. I also went to therapy. Dr. Patterson was in her 40s, kind and insightful, and she helped me understand how I'd lost myself in my marriage. "You're not unusual," she told me during one session. "Many women of your generation were taught that being a good wife meant prioritizing your husband's needs above your own, that supporting his career was more important than pursuing your own ambitions, that keeping the peace was worth swallowing your voice." "But I didn't have to do that," I said. "I chose it." "Did you?" she challenged gently. "Or did society, your family, the culture you grew up in, all teach you that was what love looked like? That sacrifice and self-negation were the same as devotion? Eleanor, loving someone shouldn't require you to disappear." Those words stayed with me. I hadn't just lost myself in my marriage to Michael. I'd been taught from girlhood that losing myself was what I was supposed to do, that being a good wife meant having no needs of my own, that marriage was about making someone else happy at the expense of my own happiness. And it had taken 38 years and a devastating betrayal to realize that was a lie. I started setting boundaries I'd never set before. When Sarah asked if I could babysit Lily every Tuesday, I said yes, but only if she arranged for someone else to do Thursdays, because Thursdays were my yoga days. When James asked if I could fly to Seattle for a week to help him move to a new apartment, I said I'd come for a long weekend, but not a full week,
because I had commitments here. They were small things, but they mattered. I mattered. In June, I got a promotion at work, nurse supervisor for my unit, a position that came with more responsibility, more hours, and significantly more pay. The old Eleanor would have hesitated, worried about the time commitment, thought about how it might affect other people. The new Eleanor said yes immediately. When I called Margaret to tell her, she screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "That's my sister!" she shouted. "That's my brilliant, capable, amazing sister who's finally showing the world what she's worth." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. When did you get so wise? 2 divorces, remember? I learned the hard way. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "But you're going to be okay, Elle. Better than okay. You're going to be great." And she was right. Sarah brought Lily over one Saturday afternoon in late July. We sat in the garden, Lily sleeping in her carrier, while Sarah and I drank iced tea and talked. At some point, she looked at me and said, "Mom, you seem different." "Different how?" I asked. "Happier." Pause. "Lighter. Like someone removed a weight you'd been carrying." She smiled. "I like it. I like seeing you like this." "I like me like this too," I admitted. "I just wish I'd found her sooner." "Better late than never," Sarah said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "And for what it's worth, you're an amazing role model for Lily. I want her to grow up knowing that women don't have to lose themselves to be loved, that we can be strong and independent and whole on our own." She paused. "Thank you for teaching me that." I cried, of course. But they were good tears, healing tears, the kind of tears that came from finally believing that I deserved better than what I'd settled for.
In August, I ran into Michael at the grocery store. Literally ran into him. Our carts collided in the produce section. We both jumped back, startled, and then our eyes met. It was the first time I'd seen him since the hospital in February. He looked older, grayer, tired. "Ellie," he said, then caught himself. "Eleanor, sorry." "It's okay," I said. And it was. I didn't feel angry anymore when I looked at him. I didn't feel sad or betrayed or hurt. I just felt neutral, like he was someone I used to know a long time ago. "How are you?" he asked awkwardly. "Good. Really good, actually. I got promoted at work. I'm a nurse supervisor now." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or regret. "That's great. You always deserved that." "Yes," I agreed simply. "I did." There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, Michael cleared his throat. "I'm sorry, Eleanor, for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry." I looked at this man I'd spent 38 years with. This man who'd broken my heart and shattered my life. This man who taught me, in the most painful way possible, that I was stronger than I ever knew. "I forgive you, Michael. Not for you, for me. Because carrying that anger was exhausting, and I'm done being exhausted." His eyes got shiny. "Thank you." I nodded, maneuvered my cart around his, and continued shopping. As I walked away, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The closure I hadn't known I needed had just happened in the produce section of a grocery store, and it was perfect in its imperfection. That fall, as the leaves turned gold and red and the air grew crisp, I started dating. Nothing serious. Coffee with a man from my yoga class, dinner with someone Lydia set me up with from her husband's work. I wasn't looking for another relationship, wasn't trying to replace what I'd lost. I was just enjoying being seen
and valued and appreciated for who I was, not who someone needed me to be. Some dates were terrible. Some were pleasant, but led nowhere. And one, a man named Robert, a retired teacher with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor, turned into a genuine friendship that might, someday, become something more. But I wasn't rushing. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't orienting my existence around someone else. I was simply enjoying my own company and letting everything else unfold naturally. On what would have been my 39th wedding anniversary, I did something I'd been thinking about for months. I gathered all the photos of Michael and me from around the house, wedding photos, vacation pictures, family portraits, and I put them in a box. Not to throw away or destroy, but to put away. Those memories were part of my history, but they didn't need to be on display anymore. They didn't need to define my present. Then, I hung new photos. Sarah and James as children, Lily's newborn photos, Margaret and me on our San Francisco trip, my nursing team at the promotion celebration, pictures of me doing things I loved, in my garden, at yoga, volunteering at the library, a photo collage of Eleanor Thompson, not Mrs. Michael Thompson, of a woman who'd lost herself and then found herself again. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, so broken, so lost, so convinced that her life was over because her marriage had ended. And I thought about the woman I was now, stronger, braver, more myself than I'd been in decades. It hadn't been easy. There had been nights when I cried myself to sleep, days when the loneliness felt crushing, moments when I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake in walking away. But I'd survived all of it, more than survived. I'd grown. I'd learned that I was capable of standing on my own, of building a life that was mine, of being happy without needing someone else to complete me. The real tragedy of my marriage wasn't that Michael had cheated. It was that I'd forgotten I was enough on my own, that I needed to be betrayed before I remembered my own worth. But I'd remembered now, and I was never, ever forgetting again. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I raised my glass to the sky, to second chances, to new beginnings, to women who find their strength in the ashes of what they lost, to Eleanor Thompson, survivor, nurse supervisor, grandmother, and most importantly, her own person. My name is Eleanor Thompson. I'm 63 years old, and this is not the end of my story. It's just the beginning of the best chapter yet. If you liked my story and found strength in it, please leave a comment below. Have you ever had to find yourself again after losing yourself in a relationship? I'd love to hear your experiences. And if this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who might need to hear it today.